Hello again, my name is David Watts from Lenovo Press, and today we're going to be talking about the ThinkSystem SR630 V2. This is our new 1U 2-socket system. I have with me today Russ Resnick. Russ is the worldwide segment manager for 1 and 2 socket rack and tower servers. How you doing, Russ?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah. So this is our new 1U system. This is based on the new Intel, third generation Intel Xeon scalable processors. And we're going to take you through the system. We're going to talk about the components at the front, components at the back, and then look inside as well. How's that sound, Russ?
Sounds great. Let's get started.
But before we get into the actual physical components, Russ, tell us about what type of customer is suited for this system.
So this system is really a highly configurable general purpose system that's designed for compute density, and which lets customers do workloads such as database and analytics and even cloud computing, virtualization, in a dense form factor. And with the new processors, with more cores, up to 40 cores per socket, it brings more density than the previous generation.
Yeah, our previous generation, of course, was the ThinkSystem SR630. Yeah. Now, as you'll see, this system has similar components to our SR645. So if you're familiar with that system, as we move through the components, you'll see some similarity there. Yeah. So let's look at the front first. This system is configured with 2.5-inch drive bays. This particular one has got 10 2.5-inch drives. These can be configured as pure NVMe or any bay, or combinations of those with SAS and SATA drives as well. We also offer configurations with 3.5-inch drives. So these are the 4 by 3.5-inch. In addition to that, we have variations of those, including a configuration where there are 8 2.5-inch drives. And Russ, that allows us to use this internal diagnostic display, right? This is an LCD display?
That's right. That's an LCD display that lets the customers or the servicers, work with the xClarity controller within the system to get further information about failures, IP addresses, and those kinds of things to help lower the time it takes to either fix the server in the unusual event it may fail, or to deploy it.
Yeah, and that just simply tucks away when you don't need it. On the front of the system, the usual power button and ID button and LED displays that are there. There also is this internal diagnostic port I'm pointing out just here, and that plugs in this new handset. This is our external diagnostic handset. Now, Russ, why would you use this rather than the internal display?
Well, in the case where you've got 10 drive bays in the system, there's not space for the diagnostics panel integrated within the system. So in this case, we wanted to continue to let customers use the functionality of the internal panel, and we just created an external version of the panel.
And the advantage of this is that you can share this with multiple systems. In fact, you can share it with a whole rack of systems or even a whole row of systems in a larger data center. And it has a magnet on the back, so you can just simply mount it to a metal surface like the rack cabinet out of the way, and then have easy local management access to the xClarity controller service processor. And as Russ points out, it doesn't consume the space occupied by the internal display. Now, there's also a third choice, Russ, right, with xClarity Mobile.
That's correct. So customers who have either cell phones or tablets and can get those into the data center, or if the server's in a rack that's not in a data center and there's no issues with using such a device near the server, they can plug into the USB port that has the wrench on it.
Yes, that's this one just here.
The xClarity mobile app to talk to the xClarity controller. But we recognize that there are customers who don't want those kinds of devices in the data center, which is why we created the handset.
Yeah. And so that's this USB port here. It's a USB 2 port. Next to it is the USB 3.1 Gen 1 port that we have. An optional VGA port is available there. So it rounds out the usual ports and indicators we have in the front. So that's the front of the system. Let me, oh no, I should actually point out too, Russ, that we have a new variation of drive capability. This is
Right.
the EDSFF drives.
That's right. You know, we've seen this emerging form factor, EDSFF, which are these, you know, dense NVMe flash drives
Yes.
that are coming into the market. So we created a backplane for this server that has 16 EDSFF bays. And what we, you know, for customers who need lots of IOPS, they can use this configuration of the server for workloads that really need those kinds of IOPS, like a database type application or analytics, those kinds of things. And we see that this form factor drive is emerging. It's more dense. The other thing it does is it improves the thermal capabilities of the system. As you know, with the power increasing in the processor so much, we have to find ways to better cool the system. So these drives, as you can see, allow more airflow through the system and you know, allow more drive density as well in the system.
Yeah. So the SR630 V2 supports up to 16 of these drives. The drives are actually mounted vertically in the space of where the 2.5-inch drives go. And so each of these 4 groupings here will support 4 of these drives, so a total of 16 across the front. It allows you space to use that internal diagnostic display if you want to in the 5th position, or not if you don't need it. But that's what this is, the new EDSFF form factor. So that's the front of the system. Let me rotate that. Oh, I should actually point out quickly, there is the usual pull-out tab, which has access to the MAC address and IP address of the xClarity controller. You're probably quite familiar with that. So let me rotate this. Right, there we go. So at the back of the system, the system by default will support up to 3 slots. These are PCIe 4.0 by 16 slots. This particular configuration has 2 slots, 2 low-profile slots, and this new capability. This is a pair of 7mm drives. These are 2.5-inch width drives, but they're 7mm thickness, not the usual 15mm thickness. So it allows you to fit 2 drives, 2 hot swap drives, in the space of 1 slot. Now, Russ, why would you use these 7mm drives? What's the use case for those?
So these are really meant as rear-facing hot swap boot drives. We've integrated them into the system, so they're best used as boot drives. Mm-hmm. You know, we had moved to M.2 boot drives, which this system still supports, but we found customers still wanted the ability to have hot swap boot drives, and rear-facing was good enough. So we didn't want to really chew up the entire back with 2.5-inch drives for boot drives. So what we did is we created this tray that holds a pair of these 7mm either NVMe or SATA drives that can be used as rear hot swap boot drives.
Yes.
Now, for those customers who do want full 2.5-inch drive bays in the back, we have this other cage so that we can have actually up to 12 2.5-inch drives in the server.
And those could be NVMe too, right?
2 in the back.
Yeah. So I have here the 2.5-inch rear cage for those drives. They can be SATA or NVMe, which means, by the way, that you can have, if you have a pure NVMe system, that's up to 12 high-performance NVMe drives that are a possibility. Of course, when you install that in this position, then that leaves you 1 slot at the back rather than 3 that are possible. So that's this option as well for the back. If you do have a need for full height slots, then the server also supports a configuration where you have 1 low profile slot and 1 full height slot. These are half length, and they then go in place of the 2 low profiles and any drive bays you might have. So that's again another option that's available to you. Right.
So, and then of course, for networking, we have the OCP slot.
Yes, of course. So this is a very convenient LOM solution. It is in addition to the 3 slots that are here. So you always have this, regardless of your slot and drive configuration at the back. And this is an example. This is I believe, a 4-port 1 gig LOM, but they're available in 1 gig or 10 gig or 25 gig for that matter.
That's right.
And it goes there. It goes into the slot quite easily. There's a thumb screw to remove it quite simply. The other connectors at the back, if I may go through those, we have here the standard management Ethernet port, so that allows you remote management control through the xClarity controller. If you recall, we talked about the local management features that are available at the front of the system. This port is for remote management capabilities into the xClarity controller. Further along, we have 3 USB ports. These are all USB 3.1 Gen 1. We've got a VGA port there. And then there's a couple of pinhole connectors, usual things, NMI. There's an ID display, ID LED that corresponds to the ID button at the front. So it allows you to recognize which system is you're working on. If you're actually in the data center, you can press the button at the front. It will light up the light at the back, just so you know which system you're working on. That's quite a handy feature. Yeah. And the system, of course, has 2 hot swap power supplies. This system has the 750 watt power supplies installed. Russ, the system has choices of 4 different sizes, right?
Yeah, we have 500,
Yep.
750, 1100, I believe, and then 1800.
Yes, yeah, for high-end configurations. This system supports GPUs, so in highly configured systems, you might need the high-end 1800 watt systems, high 1800 watt power supplies. And of course, this system also supports now a new DC power option. This is it's a minus 48 volt DC. So for telco customers that want to deploy this system in their central offices, then minus 48 volt is another option as well. And that's, I think, a 1100 watt supply, I think.
Yes,
yeah,
it's 1100 watt.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the rear. I think that's everything. Let me rotate that across and show you the insides now. So Russ, we've got here 2 processors. These are the new 3rd generation Intel Xeon Scalable processors, 1 and 2. And right next to that is a whole stack of memory DIMMs. Each processor.
Right, so these new processors now have 8 memory channels per socket. So with 2 DIMMs per channel, we now have 32 DIMMs in the system.
Right, yep. So if you're using, for example, the 128 gig RDIMMs, then that's a total of 4 terabytes of memory that the system supports. It also supports persistent memory, the new 200 series PMM. So that's also an option for you to configure. Both memory mode or app direct mode are available. Now, Russ, let me point out these new high-performance heat sinks that we use here for the highly configured systems. There's the usual heat sink that sits on top of the processor, and then there's also these 2 satellite heat sinks connected via copper pipes. Russ, what's all that about?
So what we've done here is we've improved the thermal characteristics of the product over its predecessor by adding these, radiator-style heat sinks. Also notice this system has 8 fans, and the previous system had 7.
Yep.
So with more fans, higher performance fans, and these high-performance heat sinks is how we can support a pair of these 270 watt processors in the one use server.
Yeah, these are quite an amazing set of technologies right here to help cool the powerful systems. Yeah, so these are the 8 hot swap fans that are accessible just there. Now in front of those, when you've got the 2.5-inch drive bays, we have space for additional connections here, and this is a RAID card, this adapter right here. This is an internal RAID card. Sometimes it's referred to as CFF form factor or compact form factor. It's a card that doesn't occupy any of the slots at the back. It's cabled in through the PCIe lanes, but it means that you've got access to that adapter, even though you may not necessarily have the slots at the back for it. So that's a very handy feature for 2.5-inch drive configurations. And next to that is an M.2 adapter. We talked about the 7mm drives before, hot swap at the back. If you choose to not use that, we still have the M.2 adapter with support for 2 M.2 drives, and that again is used for an OS boot offering. Russ, there are three different M.2 configurations. There's SATA, NVMe, and there's RAID as well, right?
That's right. So we have rated M.2s, and they can be either SATA or NVMe.
Yeah. Now, even as it mentioned, you can't use the internal RAID card when you've got the 3.5-inch, but you can still use the M.2 because that will sit on top of the 3.5-inch drives. Those are thin enough that there's actually space for the M.2 to sit, so that's still available to you in that configuration.
The other thing I should mention about the 3.5-inch drive configuration is those are any bay, which means you can have a mix of SAS, SATA, or NVMe in the 3.5-inch bays, which means we have a converter tray where you would put the 2.5-inch NVMe drive in the 3.5-inch tray, and for some customers you could have a tiered storage arrangement in a 1U with 3.5-inch drives and some NVMe.
Yeah, I actually would point out that this particular system we have here, the backplane is it's a combo SAS, SATA, and NVMe. This cable just here is the NVMe cable that drives the 4 AnyBay drives that sit on this side of the server. So Russ, while we're here, the system also supports an intrusion switch, right, for physical security.
Right. We've added a chassis intrusion switch
to
this server, and so the Xclarity controller can be notified and then send an alert if somebody opens the top of the server, either inadvertently or on purpose.
Yes.
And then there's also a front security bezel as
well.
Right,
that covers the front drive bays, yes. Yeah, so these are the 2 good security, physical security features of the server.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's, I think, pretty much about it. Russ, any more comments to add there on that?
No, I think the only comment I'd have here is that, this is the next generation of Intel Xeon scalable processor. We think we've taken great advantage of it in a compact package. And, if customers were to have any more questions, they can certainly go to Lenovo Press. The product guide for this server will have a lot more extensive details about the server.
Yes.
And then, of course, if you have further questions, please, get hold of your local Lenovo sales rep.
Yeah.
Or business partner.
Very good, yes. I'll put the link to the product guide in the description for the video, so you'll have access to that too. Well, there you go. So this is the ThinkSystem SR630 V2, our new 1U 2-socket system featuring the 3rd generation Intel scalable processors. Russ, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. All right. See you later. Bye.
Bye.